Okay, hello, it's Wednesday, June 12th. It's the Board of Commissioners' regular meeting, talking to the audience in the room, the huge audience, the grassroots television, and all the ships at sea. We are here today. And the first thing we have on our agenda, first is George Newman. Our Commissioner Newman is not attending. He will not be here today, but the rest of us are here and we're ready to go. The first thing we have is a proclamation, which I'd like to read. We all stand. I think I'll just do it by the microphone here. This is a proclamation of the Board of County Commissioners recognizing June as Dark Sky Month. Hooray. Whereas, the aesthetic beauty and wonder of the dark night skies are the heritage of all humankind, and whereas the experience of standing beneath a dark night sky inspires feelings of wonder and awe and may encourage interest in science and nature, especially among young people, and whereas outdoor lighting directed upward into the sky constitutes light pollution of the nighttime environment, and whereas light pollution represents a waste of natural resources amounting to at least $2 billion per year and contributes to diminished American energy independence. And whereas light pollution has scientifically established negative effects on ecology and human health, and whereas the problem of light pollution in the United States continues to grow at an average annual rate of 3 to 5% per year and is impacting more communities across Colorado, and whereas solving the problem of light pollution involves making better use of outdoor lighting to direct down to where it is needed instead of upward into the sky. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners is honored to proclaim June as Dark Sky Month.
Yay.
Hear, hear. I'm all in favor of that.
I want to make a comment, but I'll get to the mic.
Come on down.
I think what's really exciting when you're driving back late from meetings, because we travel so much, the Board of Commissioners, and you know when you hit the Pitkin County line because the whole lighting issue changes. And that's one of the joys of living in Pitkin County is that we pay attention to outdoor exterior lighting issues. You don't really need to light up the river at night, and you need, lights outside for safety factors. But it's really a nice change when you drive into Pitkin County and you're able to see the night sky more than it was some years ago, actually.
You know,
more light.
On that topic, I just saw an article that said that it turns out that the light used in grow houses, the ubiquitous grow houses we've seen popping up across the country, are major sources now of light pollution.
Because that's why the Grow Center, the greenhouse in Basalt has shades. So when they have to leave the lights on at night, they have to shade them.
Yeah, very important. It interferes with hummingbirds and bees and everybody else, and people. It makes me angry.
We don't have our assistant county manager here.
Oh.
I'm sure he's on his way.
Sheet. It'll be a she today.
No,
it's Rich. It is Rich. Oh.
There's no additions.
Okay, so no additions or deletions. Let's go right into public comment, and I see we have a public comment here. Oh, sure.
Are we still reviewing the IGA with the city of Aspen, even though Gary?
Mic on?
And on the Castle Creek
Are
Trail?
we still, reviewing that IGA with the city of Aspen today?
Yeah, I talked to Gary earlier, and we are.
He's coming in.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Moving to public comment, I know we have Joe's here. Come on up. Joe, if you could come up and sit at the table with the microphone. That way we've got it on the public record. Yeah, right there is great.
So Joe, I'm going to take your picture and afterwards I'll explain why.
And the picture will go no place except here.
No, he's serious. Yeah.
My works are all over the place, and I don't want my face being all over the place.
Okay, well, as soon as I show my wife,
And
then I can erase it after that.
Your father was a real
and it's
friend.
easy to erase them off of here.
Your father was a real friend to me.
You do know we're on live TV right now.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, if you don't mind, have a seat or
So you know.
stand if you prefer. Okay, Joe, tell us what's going on. We've got about 3 minutes for you.
Okay, so I appreciate your proclamation, and my comment involves another kind of pollution, massive littering by the rafting companies, primarily Blazing Adventures. So I've lived on the same piece of property for over 40 years. 8 feet from the banks of the Roaring Fork River. The property goes on both sides of the river. In those 40 years, I'd say maybe a half dozen trees have fallen within the purview of where our little section of the river is. And the rafting companies, of course, have to come and clear the way for their business. And they have no consideration as to where their leavings are going to end up. So if you can imagine coming home and finding a 12-foot log, 3 foot in diameter on your doorstep, that's happened a couple of times. And it's usually originally blazing paddles, now it's blazing adventures. And actually, Greg came down to see a recently fallen tree that fell a month ago, and 2 nights ago, Blazing Adventures came at dusk and cut that tree up and left 10, 12-foot logs to go wherever they want to go. A couple of them end up like right in front of my window, which I don't appreciate. And they talk about they're stewards of the river. They're stewards of their business. The river takes care of itself. So I just wish that I could find an entity that had some oversight over those companies. And of course, they are coming on private property without permission. I can't imagine anybody denying them permission to do their work, but somebody's got to hold them responsible as to what they leave behind them. And probably the best example is there's a deck on that property where we like to sit. And 2 years ago, a great big spruce tree fell on the house side of the river, which is the Woody Creek side. And they came and from the deck, you can see more than a mile down the river without seeing anything except trees in the river. And when this tree fell a couple years ago, they cross-cut the tree, and they left what they left right in front of the deck, which is like a big white spotlight. So you're looking down the river, and your view plane is ruined. And we called them every couple of weeks for the whole summer, and they kept saying, yeah, we're going to take care of it. It's our responsibility. They never did. We had to hire 3 guys to come with come-alongs to drag it into the woods and recut it. So I'm asking if there's any government entity that has any oversight over the rafting companies. And the company that has affected us the worst is Blazing Adventures, which they were just down there a couple of nights ago.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, I'm going to look to the county attorney. We don't have any proof because we don't do business licensing. I don't know how we could accept to maybe reach out and write a letter of some sort, just saying we appreciate the efforts you do for public safety on the rivers. I don't know if Open Space and Trails wouldn't have any purview.
Gary, do you want to add something? Come on up
Yeah.
if you do.
Well,
This
the
is
only
Gary
thing I would
Tenenbaum.
add is that every commercial outfitter has a permit through Open Space and Trails.
To use those Open Space and Trails properties, right?
Well, but it's to put in and take out, and part of the whole, part of the permit process is to be a good neighbor along the river. And so I'm not saying we have purview to tell them what to do when they get off onto private property, but we can help make the contact with the rafting companies to, at least get to them and say, hey, we've gotten complaints, and, this could impact your ability to take out if you do not get along with that. So we do have some purview. We don't have the ability to deal with the private property pieces, but we do control the put-ins and the takeouts, and
Right.
so we do
So
have
we could
that.
draft a letter just, or something, or make contact with the companies and
we can
just
do
say,
that.
be mindful. And also to respect private property, make sure you have permission from the property owner. Because the one thing I don't want to do is prevent them or tell them they can't for public safety issues when there's snags in the river that prevent not just their businesses, but private parties who want to use the river and create public safety. So we want to make sure we have a good working relationship. And it's nice to know, Gary, thank you for being here.
Thanks for showing up at the
Yeah,
right moment.
even though we didn't know you needed to be here. So we will try and contact if the board,
So I just, I called the manager of Blazing Adventures yesterday, Adam, and he told me that actually he was part of the cutting crew 2 years ago that left this massive white spotlight ruining our view of the river. I didn't ask him why he did that. I didn't ask him why they didn't take care of it after many phone calls where they said they would. All I know is we had to pay 3 people to get rid of what they left. And there's a huge one right now if you want to see what I'm talking about, like what they left 2 nights ago, it's going to end up in somebody's backyard.
Great.
We can talk to them,
And-
and then just let them know that, that the Board of County Commissioner has concerns about that. We got a public complaint, and just to, work better with the neighboring landowners. And we have a contact into Blazing Adventures, so.
Will you craft that letter for us? Is that,
Yeah.
okay, great. Steve?
So
Question.
I was going to
oh, hold on
talk
a
to
sec.
Jeff Woods, like,
The city does not.
they don't have any purview, other than business
Steve has
license.
a question here.
Could warrant a little wider discussion. I know that Jim Collins from Woody Creek at one time, he got in real hot water with the county because he was trying to deal with the,
Jim Collins is my next door neighbor.
yeah, and
Right.
the logs had come up, I guess the rafting companies had put the logs up on his property. He was trying to deal with them.
Exactly right.
And then, so I think it would be worth consulting with him. But also, we might possibly want to consult with the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board to, they might be able to help us on coming up with a more long-term solution.
I think the best connection is with the rafting companies, because we're actually permit them. But as far as the private property owners, we don't have any jurisdiction. We can't tell them what to do or people to do. Right?
The private property owner?
Yeah.
Well, we regulate private property, but in this regard, we have not ever engaged in
Yeah.
a permitting sort of regime.
So I think we start where we have some authority, and that's with the permitting. And if it's part of the
I think
permitting
we
to be
can
a good
start there
neighbor,
and
that's,
see where we get.
If you ask Jim Collins, he'll tell you a story about how
Well, I think
he
Gary-
was
yeah.
his private property was being regulated and he wasn't very happy about it.
So Gary.
We
I
can
think
have
you've
a
got
conversation
direction
with
in
them, because
Yeah.
we also talked to them about how they remove trees up in North Star and other places. So, it's a big issue, it's a safety issue, but there's also ways of dealing with it that are better than impacting private
right.
properties.
Let's see what we can do.
We can
You
do
know,
that.
Gary, while you're on the topic with them, if you wouldn't mind telling them there's a way to darken those raw cuts. You can spray
Yeah, but that's,
well, if they don't have a choice, it'd be nice to darken that so it's not.
they definitely have a choice.
They can do better of removing.
All
And
right.
so it's just, instead of making one cut and just letting it go wherever,
Exactly.
they can make better cuts, and they can make more cuts, and we can just let them know that the public is saying it and the county is concerned. And it will be, we have a very good relationship with Blazing Adventures and Aspen Whitewater and all the other ones. So we can have a good conversation with them about how they remove snags in the river and to do it without impacting private property.
And so they don't also become hazards further down, too. If the logs are 8 feet long and they still have branches, that's still a
Right.
hazard, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to move on.
So Joe,
Do you have a
just
card tonight?
while you're here,
Written
Joe,
down, but-
I wanted to tell you that we are reading your book Lime Creek at home,
You are.
and we are so thoroughly enjoying it, and Greg has a copy of it here.
Thank you.
It is so interesting and well-written book, and we thank you for
You know,
that.
so I mentioned your father was a real friend to me, and I know your father would have loved that, so.
That's right.
I was a great admirer.
Blatant promotion of Joe's book. Authorized by at least two county
Thank you for coming
commissioners.
forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for the audience.
Thanks for taking the time. And you'll be with Gary. I'll be on
Well,
top
let's
of
see
it.
what we can do.
Okay, Commissioner, public comment. We're still on public comment. That was a little out of the ordinary, but that was okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to go to commissioner comments. Steve?
The 2020 census is looking for workers in Pitkin County. I talked with a guy over at CCI the other day. He said right now they need 12 more workers in Pitkin County right today to work on an address verification process. They go through all these different procedures through the entire census process. And he said they're anticipating during the actual census taking time, they are thinking they want over 300 workers in Pitkin County.
Not gonna happen.
And it's really a tall order when we have low unemployment, everybody's employed. Anyhow, if someone is interested, this is from their little brochure. Great pay, flexible hours, weekly pay, and paid training. The flexible hours means somebody could do this on a part-time basis, and you could go, sort of on your own time and do the census work, and then do your playing or your second job. So to apply, you go to the website 2020, the numbers 2020census.gov/jobs. 2020census.gov/jobs.
Great,
Can I
thank you.
follow up on that?
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks.
Steve. If extra work is not compelling, maybe civic duty is compelling. The Denver Post is reporting today that even a 1% undercount could mean a loss of $630 million federal dollars for Colorado. So maybe I'll call them and
Yeah.
do that later in the year.
With a baby on the front and a baby on the back.
Wondering if they'll accept a,
It'll
foreign
be my
labor.
fourth job. I don't know if I can. But the problem is if you walk through town, everybody's got help wanted signs up, and people should already be employed. The season is started, which is where I wanted to bring in my public comment.
Please.
This is Food and Wine Weekend. It starts gearing up today, actually, with the tents are up, as we know, and they start fine-tuning all those events within those tents. Food and Wine does start on Friday, runs through Saturday mid-afternoon, so be prepared for lots of people downtown, and please drink responsibly. I don't know if any of you have gone, but they pack a lot into those grand tastings, and the best part for me is the chocolate. The chocolate is really special. So enjoy the weekend. It's supposed to be beautiful. And also for those of you using Independence Pass, please be mindful of bicyclists up there. The Ride the Rockies came through yesterday, but we have a lot of activity on that pass, and we will probably have a lot of activity this weekend. So please be mindful and drive safe and enjoy.
Great, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I've got one coming up. We're also looking for some volunteers for the Aspen Ideas Health Conference, which is now has a public free track for 3 sessions that are put together by Pitkin County Public Health and Aspen Ideas, Aspen Institute. The sessions are going to be on June 22nd and June 23rd. The 3 sessions that we're doing are the Roaring Fork Valley's affordable housing crisis. What does it mean for health? The second one is mental health and our first responders. That'll be an interesting program as well. The final one is the emotional toll of climate change and mental health consequences. We do need a few volunteers for each session if people would be willing to be an usher just to help people get into the library. It'll be the Dunaway Room at the Pitkin County Library. On June 22nd, the session starts. A volunteer would have to show up around 9:30 and then again at 1:30 just for an hour each time. And then on the 23rd Sunday, it'd be an 8:30 a.m. call time for the 3rd session. And we'd welcome everybody. It's free and open to the public. And that's it for me. Kelly, anything else?
No, I was just going to reiterate Patty's safety considerations. Be safe on the rivers, the roads, and with all that rosé.
And the ski hill.
Rose River and rosé
And-
and chocolate.
And the ski trails are open this weekend too, and there will be a lot of people skiing and biking on the pass this weekend as well. So it's going to be busy. Let's all have fun and be safe. Moving right along into consent items. For a single reading, we've got the minutes from Jeanette. Any questions, any comment? We want a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of the May 22nd and May 28th meetings.
I'll second.
We have a second. Further comment? No comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks, Jeanette. Now, Jeanette, and we're going to send a copy of that Dark Skies Proclamation to Dorothea Ferris. If she
Yeah.
initiated that, I'd like to get one too. I want one as well. I love that.
She was a big push for that.
Okay, individual consideration items. This is a public hearing. We're going to open up the public hearing. This is one reading. It's application for a special event liquor permit submitted by the Buddy Program. Jeanette is here again. You're back.
Thank you. Jeanette Jones, clerk to the board. And joining me at the table today is Maddie Hawken and Megan Perlman. And I believe we also have Maria Budsey here with us today. And this is a special event liquor request for their annual event, which is on July 5th this year from 6 o'clock until 11:30 p.m. And it's at the, what do you call it? Is it still the Merry-Go-Round Ranch up in McLean Flats Road? So I'll turn the time over to these ladies and let them tell you about this year's event.
Thanks for coming. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us. So you already got some details about the event. This is our 20th annual Bash for the Buddies, and it benefits the Buddy Program. It's annually attended by typically over 500 people. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. The Buddy Program works with 547 youth, 147 adult volunteers, and 13 schools between Aspen to Carbondale and Rifle, and we have 4 youth mentoring programs. And we provide all of our programs and services at no cost to all the kids that we serve, and the Bash for the Buddies raises almost half of our operating budget in one night, so it's a very, very important event, fundraising event for us. As you mentioned, it begins at 6 p.m. It's kind of a typical fundraising event where we have a silent auction, a really fun component called the Taste of Aspen, where we invite some of the best restaurants around town to come and serve appetizers. And then we go into a seated dinner, a live auction, and we have a really amazing band this year called Here Come the Mummies. And they're definitely 5,000-year-old Egyptian mummies, and they play. They're an 8-piece band, and they play funk rock music. So it's going to be really, really cool. And our theme this year is Night on the Nile, so it's an Egyptian theme.
Perfect.
Yeah, and anyone who's interested in learning more about the Bash or the Buddy Program can go to buddyprogram.org or give us a call at our office, 970-920-2130.
Great. Any questions?
I have one question.
Okay.
Merry-go or merry-go-round?
Merry-go-ranch.
I know. See, I've always known it's the Merry-Go-Round Ranch, and I went, did they change the name to just Merry-Go? Or have I been missing that every time I drive? This is a great event, and I encourage the public to attend. It's a great organization and a great event, so we thank you for bringing it forward again this year.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else? Kelly?
I guess I just wonder, is it, they've been given a 3-year permit from ComDev. Is it possible for us to align our processes and approvals with that?
Liquor license?
For the
approval with
liquor
event?
license, Kelly, is that when the liquor license is on a yearly event?
And we
Yeah.
can't.
It's a state
No,
license.
it's a,
Got it.
yeah.
That's a good idea.
Great. Well, she just tried to save you some time. It's not going to work.
After going through year 2 of our 3-year permit, it would be easier just to do an annual permit, event permit. But they're working on it.
Well, it's nice that you get to come forward, and then we get to do a little public service announcement.
Yes, absolutely.
Steve?
So I think it's good that you have to come in every year for the liquor license, because then it gives some publicity on grassroots TV for the event. and that's good.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
I just wanted to, first of all, to thank Boogie. He's been doing this forever. He is such a great community
Absolutely.
player, and
Yep.
just want to express our gratitude to him, and also for the buddy program. I had the opportunity to spend some time with the school class this early spring, teaching a class, which was quite new to me. But I came away thinking, I wish I'd had some buddy program people there with me. So I'll probably reach out to you all, one, because I was just thinking, wow, this is exactly what this group probably could have learned, and of course, most of them knew about the buddy program already, so your saturation's pretty good, very good, I'm sure.
you.
But anyway, it just made me realize the value of the program and how grateful that I am that we're all doing this and it's so strong here.
Great.
So, yeah, we need this program. This is an essential thing,
Thank you.
in my opinion. So,
So I'll make a
We
motion.
have public
oh,
comments.
it is a public hearing, yeah, this is open. Would anybody like to say anything on behalf of the buddy program or about the party or anything else? We've public comments open. I see none, so I'm going to close it back up, back to
So I'd
Steve.
like to make a motion to approve the special event liquor license for the buddy program.
I will second.
Okay, further conversation on that? No, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming
so
in.
much.
Have a great
Thank you.
party.
Thanks.
And Maddie, I'll email your license.
All right, we're going to move on. So we just closed the public hearing. Individual consideration items, first readings set for public hearing on June 26th. And Connie's going to come in. There she is. She's back.
Good afternoon, Connie Baker, Picken County Budget Director, and we're here for the first reading of second quarter budget supplemental requests. You should be very familiar with them since yesterday staff was here in your work session to talk through each of their requests and answer questions. And a few of the staff are here today also in case another question were to come up. This resolution changes the county budget for 2019. It increases expenditures by $1,185,328. That's offset by an increase in revenues of $309,604. And that's a net increase of $875,724. Those amounts, though, are mainly in funds that have special revenues. The general fund has very little impact to its fund balance through these supplemental requests. It's almost no change at all in the general fund. So a good thing this go-round.
Connie, just to point that out so we know, we're looking at that change or the expenditure change in the general fund is 100,000 of that. Is that correct? Am I missing?
So if you look on the next to the last page, I believe that's page 27. For unassigned general fund total, there's an increase in revenue of 62,000 and an
Okay.
expenditure change of 68,000. So the net between those two is just a couple $1,000s out of general fund balance.
Great, thank you.
And the reason there's so little impact is that we have a number of these requests that are net zero, and many are also for grants that are being received. So some good reasons to increase the budget. In the general fund, there's a request for a motor vehicle specialist. This is a 50% FTE. And this would be a term-limited half-time position, a term limit of 3 years, and the money for it comes out of a restricted fund balance, so it does not come out of the general fund balance. Then also in the clerk's office, there's a request for electronic recording technology indexing grant, and this is a net zero request also. In the sheriff's office, a request for a summer temp deputy for a period of 640 hours, and this would be covering court security to free up other deputies who are training or on the road. There's a public safety leadership program grant. This again is a net zero request, and that's in the sheriff's office. And then for detentions, a request for firearms qualified detention deputies. There's another request from Community Development for 1 FTE. This is a term limit of 1 year, and it is to give them support in data cleanup for their software implementation, the permit applicant tracking system. And this does not affect fund balance because we're just simply moving money from the PATS project and from land use code and moving it over to cover this salary for a period of 1 year. In the Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund, they would like to move the dynamic message sign, which was planned for 2020, up into the 2019 budget, and that's $400,000. In the Solid Waste Center Fund, stormwater improvements are being requested for $340,000. And then in the Public Safety Radio Fund, at the Rudai site, up the Frying Pan Valley, they would like to include digitally trunked radio system equipment and infrastructure at that site. That's a net increase of $115,000. And then the Translator Fund, TV translator upgrades. This was brought on by a change in spectrum that was awarded to T-Mobile. And pending grant reimbursement by the FCC, this will be a net zero request also.
Great, thank you.
Any questions on these supplemental requests?
We've seen them already, but.
Yeah,
please.
I don't have any questions. I just need to make a comment again, and I appreciate the fact that when we are upstaffing, we are now trying it to special projects, so we don't have a long-term continuation of increased full-time equivalents. And I know that sometimes we get busier special projects, and we also try and find a way to find those monies instead of taking it right out of the general fund, and I appreciate that effort. So I will wait till after the, and there's no public hearing on this, so I can make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second, and I have a comment. Just for the public's benefit, we went through these at great length in yesterday's meeting, and if anyone in the public is interested, they should look at the tape of yesterday's meeting, and it gives a full explanation and many questions that we asked about the various things from yesterday's June 11th meeting.
Thank you for adding that. That's great. So I've got a, did I get a second?
Motion and a second.
A second? All in favor?
Seconded, yeah.
Aye.
Yep.
Aye. Okay, great.
Thanks, thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Up next, we have a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Aspen for the funding for the Castle Creek Trail. And Gary's up.
That's why I was here for the
I know.
earlier piece.
Thanks. Perfect
We
timing.
thought you just sensed it.
I sensed it. Well, Joe Henry doesn't show up all that often, so anyway. So I'm Gary Tenenbaum. I'm the director of Pickens County Open Space and Trails, and here today to talk to you guys about IGA with the City of Aspen. And it's really to memorialize the fact that the county is the main contracting agency for the Castle Creek Trail. And this is the mechanism for the city to repay the county for their share of the trail. And so, updates are coming for the trail. And so the budget numbers are being worked on right now. And so that's why I wasn't in yesterday. We're still working on those. We're hoping to get them all finalized within the next week. And some of these budget numbers might change for second reading. And then we might have to go back to the city because the city already approved this IGA. And when they approved it, it was funny because Steve Skadron was approving it in his first meeting 12 years ago.
And on
Was
his
his
last
first
meeting.
item was the Castle Creek Trail, and his last item
That
was
is
the Castle Creek Trail.
amazing.
12
So
years apart.
he was just like, wow, government is working really fast to get these things done. So it was kind of funny to see that. But anyway, the numbers might change a little bit in it, but the IGA is to provide the mechanism to be able to have the city repay the county for the contracting.
Questions? Steve?
My question has to do with the title. It just says Creek Trail. It doesn't say Castle Creek Trail. On the resolution and on the IGA, and I'm curious why it seems like it should say Castle Creek Trail in the
Because
title.
it says it throughout the body of the text.
That's funny. Okay, so we got it. We got to We'll fix that for second
It could be talking about
reading.
the Hunter Creek Trail or the.
Yeah, no,
East of
we need to,
Aspen
we'll
Trail
fix
or
that.
any number
It
of
does, it
trails
says it on the
that.
reso that way too.
Kelly?
Sure. Coming late to the dialogue, I guess one thing that stood out to me is why the cost of the project isn't being split 50-50 between the two entities, given that the music school really benefits the city probably more than the county.
Good. It's a good question, and it's been talked about a lot. And the reality is the way it came down is about 20% of the project is in the city of Aspen, and the majority of it is in the county. And so, you know, when the county approved the music school and the Aspen Country Day School to redo their campuses, the music school was on the hook for $250,000. That's totally coming to the county. And so, you know, all along the city's been splitting the cost for the design and the public outreach. But when it came to the actual construction, they felt, and we discussed it with the BOCC and open space boards and the city council, they felt, let me pay what's in the city, you guys pay what's in the county. And because we've done projects in the past where we're 50-50 partners, and some of them are all in the city and some of them are all in the county. This is just a much larger project. So this is where they came up with, and this is where their budget was, what they proposed, and through the budget process, it was approved that way.
Thanks for the
So,
history.
sure.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, but I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading when we'll probably have, well, hopefully we'll have the final. And then it's my understanding that it could be somewhere down the line, we may have to do an amendment to the IGA depending upon how things pan out.
Well, we'll come to second reading and determine if, it'll depend on where the cost for the city part of the project might change a little bit. And that's the bigger piece, because for the county, we're not giving the city any money. So our number is not as important as the city's number, because it's got to be memorialized that we're going to take a certain amount of money. So the city number might change a little bit, so we'll bring that back in, just so we can collect that throughout the project.
And I think I've been part of this for 12 years too, so
Yes, you have.
So we have your
if
motion,
not even longer, yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
and we need a second.
Second.
A second from Kelly.
Thanks, Gary.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Moving it forward, we'll be back for public hearing on June 26th.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks.
Now, up next, ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners releasing a restrictive covenant prohibiting commercial agricultural uses on the Zabriskie Ranch. And Ryan Ely's here. Hi.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Do I-
If you could come up with me, and I've got Miss Amons here as well.
So, Roy,
I've got Steve has a question.
just in full disclosure, I've been aware of this restrictive covenant ever since almost the day that John Zabriskie signed it years ago, and he came to the Snowmass Capitol Creek Caucus and complained about it, and we discussed it then. And then in the meantime, Mary came to me and asked for advice, and I directed her to meet, to go to our county's attorney's office and possibly the community development. And then I talked to John Ely about it also. So I have some previous knowledge of this, but
And so here we are.
will be, everything you'll be able to hear today
Yeah.
is basically what I know about it.
I was on the board when we created this restrictive covenant, so I can remember well when we did it and how and why that was done, so
Okay,
not a conflict, though.
let's get started. Thanks, Wright.
Problem. Anyway, Ryan Ely, Assistant County Attorney. I'm here with Miss Mary Amons. She's the property owner. And I've also got Suzanne Wolf here. I think Larry Fipe may stop by in case you guys have a question about valuing commercial agricultural property versus residential property. He was going for a walk around the block. I don't think he thought you guys would get to this that quickly. Anyway, as Commissioner Postman said, this is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, releasing a restrictive covenant prohibiting commercial agricultural uses on the Zabriskie Ranch. what was the Zabriskie Ranch is now owned by Miss Amons and her husband, and they have renamed the ranch the New Spring Ranch, I believe. You can see that property right up here. Let me make it a little bit larger for you here. Anyway, this is the New Spring Ranch. You can see Snowmass Creek Road right here, Lazy O Road. This is the Y right down here coming up Snowmass Creek this way heading towards Capitol, and this way continuing up Snowmass Creek. I believe Miss Amons purchased this property in 2018.
It's been exactly a year.
It's been exactly a year. Anyway, why we're here is because in 2007, in connection with the land use approval, which was an administrative approval, and that was administrative decision number 99, 2007, the Pickens County Community Development Department approved certain development activity for the property. Specifically, they went through activity envelope, site plan, and special review for caretaker dwelling units. That was approved, but as a condition of approval, the administrative decision included a finding that the development approved changed the character of the property to, and I've got the language here for you. You can kind of see it right here. It's not the highlighted text, sorry, but it says, the development approval changes the primary and fundamental use of the land from being primarily agricultural, and as a condition of development approval, the owner must record a covenant prohibiting commercial agricultural activity. The then owner of the property went ahead and did that, and that was accepted by the county, and that covenant was put in place pursuant to this provision of the Pickens County Land Use Code. And Suzanne may be able to give us a little bit more background on how this particular prohibition came to be. But essentially, there is a provision of the code that allows the Community Development Department to consider certain factors when requesting that a covenant such as this be placed on the property. I think Susanna and I talked about it the other day. I'm not sure how many there are around the county, maybe a dozen, if that many. Maybe
Probably less than a dozen.
More than a handful, and up to 10 maybe.
Okay. So I guess if you have any questions about how we apply this generally, Suzanne would probably be better to talk to her about that. Anyway, that was put in place in 2007. I'm going to flip back to the covenant here for you. There is a provision of the covenant that I did highlight right here, which is that at the request of the owners, this covenant may be released by the Board of County Commissioners if the circumstances which originally caused the covenant to be required were to change. I think Ms. Amons is here today to make that request to you. I know she included a letter in the packet addressed to you wherein she is basically requesting this and providing you some background about why she thinks it's appropriate, and I'll give her a chance here to chat with you all. I just wanted to go over a couple other things. This is a discretionary decision for you all. We accept these covenants as property interests. The decision to release them is completely at your discretion, so that's something to think about. I also wanted to let you know that Suzanne's here also to let you know that the Community Development Department has looked at this request, and Cindy Hubin is comfortable with that, and I asked Suzanne to be here to convey that on behalf of the Community Development Department. So, barring any board comments right now or questions, I was going to turn it over to Ms. Amons.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Any questions before I?
Anybody want to?
Might
Have
later,
some
but I'm
after.
good.
We'll see.
but-
We'll probably get into it, yeah.
So I am Mary Ammons, and my husband is Tim, and we purchased
Let me make sure your mic's turned on,
sorry. Zabriskie property. Better?
You can slide it towards yourself if you want.
Just a year ago, I had been living in Capitol Creek, which is how Steve and Molly and I became acquainted, for about, my children and myself on and off for 3 years, because my children were living and working in the valley. And if you'll indulge me a minute, I'll just give a little background about arriving and why we purchased the property. I think it's germane to my aspirations to farm. I am a Colorado native. So is my husband, essentially. He moved here when he was 8 years old. Even though I was educated and raised in the city, Denver was Front Range, and my family had a ranch in Park County. And this was very much a sort of a family legacy. I grew up really bonding with my father around ranching, so I've had that identity for a lifetime. But as a vocation, I guess you'd say, even though I was a mother and an educator and had various part-time jobs, for 30 years I managed the cattle operation, which was small, and I put up hay. So in about 2012 or 2015, my own family, which is quite large, 7 siblings, had to make some decisions about the family ranch. And they went very much counter the history for me, which was a family, as family manager. So to make that long story very short, it became the best solution for me to reinvest my interest in that family legacy somewhere else. Honestly, I would not have looked at Pitkin County. It's a very expensive place to look at something that's agricultural. Colorado in general, everyone's known for years, agricultural land is vanishing. And I am eccentric in my own desire, not simply to own and operate a ranch, but to actually be involved in the work. And I've finished raising my kids. Most of them are either in college or beyond, and I'm really hoping to spend the next 20 years, if my body can do it, actually ranching or farming. So also in that time, I have 5 children, all of whom at one point or another were working for Aspen Ski Co., which is what brought me to the Valley and to Capitol Creek, being creative about our housing situation and sharing. So I think the oddest question in some ways, if you're so interested in agriculture, why did you buy a property that had this restrictive covenant on it? And honestly, I was under contract before it came to my attention that this existed. I understood the property had lapsed in terms of agricultural designation, but it wasn't clear to me that it was actually on under a restricted covenant until I was under due diligence in that phase. And it was urgent enough for me to finish the complicated legal and financial arrangements with my own siblings to proceed. So I knew I was taking a risk. I was buying a property, and Steve remembers me coming in shock with this copy saying, "What have I done?" And, honestly, this was before I actually decided to stick with the contract and buy the property. And I've kind of limited my interaction with Steve and Molly since purchasing, because I knew at some point I'd need to come in and talk about this, see if it could be. I mean, obviously, the request is written into the document, so I thought, well, I'll do my best, and I'll come in. Ironically, it was through Steve that I met some of the young farmers in the Valley, and it helped open a door for me in terms of leaving what had been a large, 1,000-acre ranch with cattle, and thinking of another way to relate to the land, have some work to do, to farm, which is not even yet my identity. I'm hoping it can become that as a farmer. I have an identity as a rancher. The Zabriskie property had some appeal to me because it did have hay ground. It's actually good hay ground. The water rights were very strong. I jumped in and was able to get about 15 ton of hay put up last year. And so I was encouraged by that. Small bale, a niche market, and I can address specifically how I think the financial circumstances have changed, how a business plan would look differently now with an agricultural entity in that location than it might have in 2007. I didn't know how much time you wanted me to take to present this.
That's I would love to open it to questions now if we could.
Thank you. So I have other details.
That's probably a good introduction. If
Perfect.
anyone has a question, I specifically, I know I'd be interested in hearing what changed with the former owner. And you could have a description, or I could, but maybe someone else should go first.
I'll go.
Ellie.
So, I looked to the code language because I was wondering about how this got taken out of commercial ag and what the criteria are for making that determination. And so two of the elements and I guess I should first ask, the reference is the same. I don't know if the language is the same. So we're using the language that exists now rather than when the covenant was put on. Is that my first question for
I don't think the,
ComDev?
Language we're using.
So I'm looking at 2010 20E.
Right?
Yeah. So I just want to make sure in the context of this request, that the language would be current language, not language that was used when the covenant was originally.
This language
on
has
the-
been in the code since 2006. It was adopted with the new code in '06, and this covenant came after that. So the
Great.
covenant was based on this language.
Perfect.
I don't
Okay.
think there's been no change to this language
Okay.
since then.
Okay, so then the two elements that I sort of honed in to help understand how the factors may have changed between then and now was where it reads, the valuation of the property and proposed improvements relative to the valuation of agricultural products produced on the property. So some information regarding how those circumstances have changed. And then a little bit later, the viability of any prospective agricultural use. So relying on that language and maybe some evidence from Ms. Amons to understand how those are different now than they were in 2007.
So let me just give you the facts that I have, which, and I wasn't sure that this would be the conversation. I could have written it up and presented it with the letter if I'd known you needed it. But in terms of valuation of the property, Tim and I actually purchased the property for less than the Zabriskis bought it before they did the improvements. I'm not sure I want to spell out all the numbers.
sure have to on that one.
And as an example of their documentation of ag activity in 2007, they had produced 10 tons of hay and sold it for $1,027. I am assuming it was round bale cow hay. My own particular suggestion now, just in terms of hay production, is that I produced 15 ton and it was small bale. And at a conservative $10 bale valuation, that's about $6,000. So I don't know the criteria for the assessor in Pitkin County of what qualifies, if there's a per acre productivity you want, or I'm familiar with Park County. But that's just an example that simply in the hay market, there's a considerable difference. There's obviously a difference if you're willing to do small bale versus big round bale. We're a family operation. We put it up, my husband, myself, and my son. That's given. I didn't sell the hay. I fed it to my own animals, and I'm under a commercial restriction, so I haven't sold it. I can't tell you I would have gotten $10 a bale, but it was 19 at the co-op, okay? So the more exciting part, I think, is about what's happening in agriculture, particularly in this valley, which is one reason I'm really excited to be here and to be at this table, which is to look at local food production and the possibility of it. I cannot promise I will succeed, but I'm very enthusiastic about the opportunity to do something. And I actually wrote Cindy Huon a long letter about possible options, and they could be as wide-ranging as potatoes or cut flowers, pumpkins. I mean, we can grow things. And if you go to Hokkaido, Japan, even 20 acres is a giant farm. Now, even being able to grow things, which would take me a few seasons to learn about, honestly, probably in my location with the temperatures and the soils, I might need infrastructure like a hoop house or greenhouse to start things. I'm not coming in proposing to be a fully operational, successful vegetable producer. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but I am excited to take on that challenge and to try, and I think that it has a lot of fertile ground. I think it has every opportunity to be a viable ag operation. And, worst case scenario, if my health were to fail, I think it could still be an ag operation for other agricultural entrepreneurs.
I have a question from Patty here.
Yeah, Larry, can you come up to the table? Since we have Larry Fight from the assessor's office. There isn't a per acre commercial revenue thing that attaches to agriculture, is there? You just have to show documentation that you've used it.
I think in essence, you can either qualify as either a farm or a ranch. So a farm being the production of crops for the primary purpose of producing a profit, or livestock for the primary purpose of producing a profit. So there's no minimum threshold income that has to be generated. The owner just has to show that the use is there and that it is for the primary purpose of obtaining a profit.
And that's state statute.
Correct.
So that clarifies, it's not county by county, it's statewide. So my understanding at the time when the county was discussing the concerns based from the Board of Commissioners back then was the gentleman ranches, that people were getting their agricultural designation from the assessor's office, and it was guys. They really weren't using the properties for agriculture. They were using them for residential purposes. So that was one of the reasons we started talking about and attaching these covenants to properties where it was pretty obvious that they were not going to be used, not even an attempt to really use them commercially.
And there's another wrinkle that has passed in the last couple of years for the gentleman ranchers, who basically lease their property out. But aren't the ones who are actually doing the farming or the ranching.
Right.
There's a classification called non-integral ag, and that puts a market value on the 2 acres, up to 2 acres under the home site. The balance of the land can still be classified as agricultural, but there will still be a market component, attributed to the 2 acres under the home site. And in most cases, the bulk of the value on a property is within that home site. I mean, people are buying the utility of what you can build, within that, 2 acre home site. So, in large part, it is able to maintain more of a market level value, on the property for those types of gentlemen, ranches.
So in this specific property, right now the entire parcel is assessed at residential?
Correct.
And so if we were to remove the covenant about commercial agricultural, would the whole property be designated as agriculture, or would we have that 2 acre development, residential building?
Again, just from what little I've heard, the Zabriskis sound like they're going to be
Running the
part and
operation.
parcel, in charge of the operation itself.
The Ammons, that's okay. The Zabriskis are the former
sorry.
owners. That's
Yeah,
okay.
the new owner.
It's confusing.
The current owners intend to be the ones operating, the agricultural.
So the whole parcel would be agriculture?
The land.
Right.
There would still be a market value on the residents.
Right.
And the other wrinkle to keep in mind is on an agricultural property, the residence is assessed at the 7.15% assessment rate.
Right.
But all of the outbuildings are, if a property is classified as ag, then are assessed at the 29%. So we've had properties, for example, where they've got, a big riding arena, and the riding arena valued at ag value, but assessed at 29%, generated a tax liability that was greater than the reduction in the land value, with the ag classification. So in that case, it didn't make sense for them to be, their tax liability actually increased because of the 29% assigned to the outbuildings. So, and I don't know what values assigned, to the barns on this property, but that's, so it's kind of, you give with one hand and take with
Right,
the other
right.
sort of a thing.
So that's maybe something that Ammons would want to take into consideration in this, and that would be outside of us lifting a covenant prohibiting commercial ag? Be then up to the assessor's office to reassess the property?
Yeah, if you were to release the covenant, it wouldn't automatically change the classification of the property. They would still have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the assessor to receive
Somewhere down the line.
reclassification of the property. And I think there's an application process or something for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's pretty
Okay,
straightforward.
so that's what they would need to do. In this case, and I've been concerned for previous Board of Commissioners discussions about the people trying to fall in under the agricultural classification, so they reduce their property taxes when they really were not operating that property as commercial ag. In this case, I think with the change in the new ownership, I think it's worth our consideration, and I think our agreement to remove this covenant. And as part of that discussion, based on the location of this parcel, and our previous discussions about some kind of parking opportunity right away, or easement to the Windstar, because there's no parking at Windstar with the change in ownership there. I would like between now and second reading for the applicant to meet with the attorney's office and have a serious conversation about the possibility of providing the county that some form of right-of-way, or easement, for parking. Because we talked with the Zabriskis about that, and we're close to reaching, actually, an agreement on that. And then the property went up for sale, and, life goes on and things change. But I would really like to see that serious discussion. Maybe in the next 2 weeks, you guys can get together and talk about that. And then because we have second reading again, and that's final. It has to move to second reading today so that gives you 2 weeks to sit down with Ryan, maybe talk about that. I think that would be important.
Can I just ask for some clarification? Because Rye sent an email this morning basically saying the same thing, and I haven't had a chance to talk. And I think some of this just needs to happen not in the public meeting, and I am a new property owner and coming up to speed on a lot of this. But both Tim and I understood when we purchased the property that there is an existing public access easement, which we're very happy to have.
There's an easement, there's no parking, is my understanding.
Well, there is no parking associated with that easement, that's correct. I think there are opportunities, several kinds of opportunities, and I'm more than happy to engage in a conversation. Are you suggesting that lifting the restriction on the covenant would be contingent on that conversation?
I'm not necessarily saying that. I just would like to have a serious conversation between the attorney's office to see if we can't somehow move in that direction. And not really contingent. I'm not saying I'm going to say no if you don't agree. I'm just saying I'd like to have the conversation occur.
And it's so funny. I actually had a neighbor, and I still feel like I'm joining the neighborhood, say, "Oh, I saw you on television," and I wasn't aware of the grassroots television.
They're going to see you again today.
So here we go, and I am going to be very,
now.
very gentle about saying this, but I want, in my own mind, to feel welcome and approved, non-restricted as an ag entity, without entangling the complications of Windstar. I am very concerned to help there, let me just say, but this is a problem that, as I can see, had many years in developing, and I don't want to feel that I'm being held responsible for fixing it in order to be an ag entity. And I'm just saying it very explicitly because we're on television.
I think that's very fair, and I'm treating these separately.
Yeah. Great, that's all I want to say.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your voicing your concerns about you saying I don't get X if I don't do Y. I'm not saying that. I am a big supporter of sustainable agriculture. I have young children in this valley who do that, and their friends do that, and I've been very supportive of that. I didn't grow up on a ranch, but my dad was a horticulturist, so we kind of ate out of the backyard a lot. In outside of LA, but you could grow anything there. So I really appreciate your efforts, and we would like to see more real farmers and ranchers back in this valley. So, but I think it would be great if you and Ryan and maybe Mr. Ely over here could sit down and have a conversation about that. That'd be great.
I want to
Thank you.
ask Questions? Over here, this side, Steve?
Well, maybe it's partly question, and maybe it's more for Suzanne. But the way I look at this is when the Zabriskis signed the covenant, there were two primary uses of the land. There always have been since the first residence was built there. One use as a private residence and the other as farm ground or pasture, and that land does have one of the two best water rights on all of Snowmass Creek. In fact, we leased it in 1977. That was the only water we had, was the water we had on that Harry Williams place there, just to help our, keep our cattle herd together in a really bad drought year. It has that good of a water right that they will always have water. But then the Zabriskis, when they signed the thing, it was sort of removing the agricultural possibility as a primary use and just saying this is just a residential property. And yet the land has always been used for agriculture, even, for grazing. It had the reindeer operation was on there at one time before the Zabriskis owned it. It's been in hay production and used for pasture ever since the whole time I've lived in the valley. So I think the primary use of the property has not changed. It's always been being used for agriculture in some aspect or other, and it wouldn't be changing now. It's still, I think what the Ammons are asking for is that we recognize that the land has two uses, one as a private residence and the other as an agricultural.
I think the key word is commercial. They could do agriculture there, but they weren't doing commercial before. They were leasing it out or something. It was changing. Now the family who's purchased the land is going to be actually doing the agriculture. That changes that.
Also, I know there are other properties in Snowmass and Capitol Creek that are assessed at agricultural rate that are much less agriculture going on them than is on this property right now.
So are you suggesting we go back in and put covenants on all those properties?
Well, no, I
don't
think
you
it's
are.
I think it's really unfair that, this property was kind of treated differently from some others that were basically doing nothing with agriculture. So I think this just kind of levels the playing field for the Ammons.
Kelly?
So this is the first time I'm dealing with one of these, and I'm just trying to tease out separate questions, I guess. And so probably for Rye, and if you want to deal with them however you like. So what I'm understanding is that here, in order for the Ammons to begin selling agricultural products on their property, they have to lift this covenant, and we need to make sure that some of this code language, that there is evidence to support something has changed and there's some valuation of commercial product potential on this property to do so. And then the next step on this would be for the Ammons to, or for the assessor's office to some way interact on how that property's valuation changes. Is that, am I correct?
I
in
think
those
that's
steps?
pretty close, except for the first half of what you were saying. The demonstration of necessary to change the classification from residential to ag, that's something that the assessor's office essentially looks at. You all, I don't think, need to make the same level of findings that the assessor's office would to say, hey, it's appropriate for this property to be classified as ag per state statute. I think you can look at the factors that went into when the covenant was placed on the property and the record that's now being created in front of you, and compare those to see if there's a change in circumstances that would make releasing this covenant appropriate at this time, and leave the next step up to the assessor's office as to whether Ms. Ammons can sufficiently demonstrate to the assessor's office that the property's being used for agricultural purposes and specifically commercial agricultural purposes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess, so the promise of a plan for commercial agriculture is sufficient to remove the restriction.
I think you can rely on that for the purposes of releasing this covenant if you want. I mean, if, I think you can, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think Ms. Amons has to come in here today and prove necessarily that she grew 15 tons of hay on the property last year. I think you can accept that from her unless you wanted to see more evidence that that she is in fact using the property in a different way than was being used in 2007.
I think the key is that this would allow her then to sell that hay, which now she can't because she can't use the ag as commercial. And it would really be up to the owner of the property to go to the assessors and apply for a change in the assessment. So it's not something we initiate, it's something the owner initiates, correct? So that's a next step outside of this step here today.
Just as a detail for you, if it's interesting, also if I buy a tractor, which I needed to do, and I buy some hay equipment, and the way we need to put together our own financial statements and our own tax reporting, you're treated differently at an ag store if you're a farm than if you're an individual.
Sure.
And so it's not, I know the taxes are important and I know that there's a gauntlet to run. I'm completely fine with that. But to be an ag entity, you're treated differently. By some contractors, you're treated differently if you buy a tractor. I would imagine that you all treat requests for certain kinds of infrastructure or fencing differently. So besides my own need to identify as an ag entity, it really has just very simple, practical importance for me.
Yeah.
Good?
I'm good. I'm ready to move forward.
I just wanted to say that I'm really think that we should lift this covenant, and I'm in favor of that. And I'd really like to see commercial agriculture happening down there. And if you're welcoming or including some of the young farmers in the valley who are looking for a place to work, so much the better. And I, at the next meeting, just bring us a bushel of carrots or something. You've got 2 weeks.
I can get them to grow. We've had the latest spring. Oh,
Less than 65 hours.
She'll bring us some.
I'll bring you
Anyway, I think it's great. I'd accept a motion if
I will
anybody's
make a
ready.
motion to approve an ordinance of the Board of Commissioners releasing a restrictive covenant prohibiting commercial agriculture uses on the Zabriskie Ranch, now known as the New Spring Ranch, and bring it back for a public hearing on the 26th of June.
I will second.
Got a second? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Mary,
you.
thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
This is
thank you.
exciting.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled. I'm getting to know the community more and more every day and every week. So
Your
thank you very
ranching,
much.
your farming, young farmers community is going to be pretty excited too, I think.
I think they will have a lot to teach me, so I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks again.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. All right, where are
Okay,
we?
what's up next? We've got an ordinance approving a lease agreement with the Aspen Homeless Shelter for the space at the Michael W. Schultz Health and Human Services Building. And Jody's not here, so Rich is going to do it.
So can I ask a procedural question before we start?
Yeah.
Do we need to,
Oh,
we need to pass them all of these leases individually, but we can have the discussion as a whole? Because it's my understanding that there's only one small portion of these leases that's changed from last year?
6 of them, right? 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
4,
so,
The next 6.
6.
yeah, so
6
if
through
somebody
11.
can point out what that small change is, that would be helpful.
We're getting
in
closer,
moving this
Sheriff.
I'm trying to move it, we're gonna move along here, Joe, we still doing
This could
leases
go rather quickly, so.
in a year.
How far down is he? He's right. Oh, you're number 12. There's one
Yeah,
more
he's
thing
right.
before you. Yeah, we're gonna go quickly. All right, go ahead,
Okay.
Rich.
Thank you. Board of Commissioners, Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager. Jody is off in training, and through her direction, she had asked that Wendy, who is here, who may be able to answer some specific questions, and Jeanette worked together to bring these leases really up to date. There's the biggest change within this. All of them are now changing their terms. These used to expire the end of June each year, and it didn't really line up with our fiscal year. And so there was a desire from Health and Human Services, along with ourselves to try to align this with our fiscal year. So that's the biggest change to this. There are some of the conditions in here of putting a little more responsibility on the owners to notify us if there are some additional items they put in, i.e. a refrigerator. They have to bring it to our attention so we can make sure that it meets code and those type of additions. So everything is consistent other than the names through here and then the lease amounts. And those lease amounts are based on a square footage price that's consistent. However, the square footage is different. So the lease amount would be different for each one. And it's been the board's desire over the years to treat this as an in-kind contribution in order to just make sure that the public has access to these type of nonprofits. So the money is collected and it's shown or it's just written in our books as an in-kind collection. So really it is a contribution towards those agencies because they don't pay that. It's seen as an in-kind service. So other than that, they're consistent. You see these each year. The biggest change is that it's going to go now a year and a half, and the next time you'll see it is in 2020. I might mention that the market analysis was done, I think, a couple of years ago, and the thought is that once we get through this next one, we'll do another market analysis on the price per square foot and go from there. So.
Question, Steve?
Well, for the Alpine Legal Services, which is now in the courthouse instead of the Schultz building, is their price per square foot the same as it was in Schultz?
I think the price per square foot.
You may have to come up, Wendy, I'm sorry.
I believe the price per square foot is the same. It's just the square footage that changed. Of course, I think it's much less than it was before. So, yeah.
So, and then I'm not sure, did they get more square footage in the courthouse or about the same or?
I believe it was a small increase, if I recall right.
It's very
It's
close to
similar.
the same
Yeah, very
amount,
similar.
yeah.
Okay, so they are still paying the same price
They
per
don't pay,
square
we do
foot.
it in kind.
It's in kind. It's just a value that's associated with it.
Yeah, that's right. They're not
Yeah.
actually paying it.
So I have two questions. So given that this is a in-kind contribution, do we see competition for these spaces or requests by other organizations for us to open that up to some sort of application process at all?
You know, I don't know that we have seen that in the past, at least since I've been here. We don't have people requesting that we reopen these up. The use is pretty consistent over the years, and people have an idea now where they're located. So I don't think we seem to have that. But I can certainly check with Nan and see if she would know.
Okay. And then do these organizations provide us with any sort of certificate of good standing or something?
I don't think we receive a certificate. However, we are in constant contact.
Yeah.
So we, being owners of the building and actually having a presence there, we do keep tabs on it. I think some of this has been tightened up, this lease, to help assure some of that, just based on experience.
Okay. Thank you.
Patty?
So it's my understanding that due to some possible issues we had with other tenants, not saying in any of these, but in other places with our leases, we now are kind of looking at, like you said, if they put in a new piece of equipment, we have the right to come in and do an inspection of sorts. And I think that's critical so that things aren't put in, not following code unsafely, or we don't find out about it until there's a problem, which I think is the possibility. So I appreciate that being addressed in these new leases and being brought to attention of the leaseholders.
Yeah, and it's also caused discussions about even their intent. Is it the change of their original intent by adding some things in that could take it a different direction? So
Yeah.
this should really help.
This allows us to really supervise
Kind of
these.
monitor it a lot better.
On that same track, I just wanted to ask about, performance. If they don't meet a performance criteria, how much time do they have to come back up to the standard? I'm not sure it's an issue with any of these. I wanted to read the list of the organizations, but I just wanted to make sure that's in the lease as well, that we have an understanding that if, say, something does go wrong, we have
I think it's in here under termination of the cause, or
that's all been reviewed.
Yeah, usually there's a clause in for curing a challenge. Then there's a notification of either ending the lease or not. So we can go in and find that specifically before the next reading, but usually there's a point to cure.
Got it.
30-day prior written notice has been given.
Okay, and then so this, we're gonna talk about these leases. We've got, as I mentioned earlier, the homeless shelter has a space there, community health services, Mind Springs Health, Recovery Resources, Response, and Alpine Legal are the entities we're talking about, just
Correct.
in this package of ordinances.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Well, we need a motion on each individually, is that correct, Mr. Ely? So I will do the first. I will make a motion to approve an ordinance approving a lease agreement with the Aspen Homeless Shelter.
Second?
Okay, and a motion on each and a vote on each, or just a
Yep,
motion?
motion and a
Oh,
vote.
Really? Okay, I didn't get that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
And
right.
these are all set for public hearing on the 26th.
26th.
I will make a motion to approve a lease agreement with the Community Health Services.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, Mind Springs?
I will make another motion to approve a lease agreement with Mind Springs Health.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will
Okay.
make another motion for approval of a lease agreement with Recovery Resources.
No second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Two more.
I will make one more motion for approving a lease agreement with Response.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I will make a last motion on these leases with an agreement with Aspen, or Alpine Legal Services, and this is because they'll still be in this Schultz building until such time as we get the courthouse building remodeled.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Should we just bundle Joey in there too?
And
He'd appreciate it, I'm sure.
we're gonna give the sheriff
Okay.
a lease agreement in our
Thanks,
building.
Wendy, thanks for coming in. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all that. All right, up next, this is an ordinance authorizing the Pitkin County Sheriff to impose and rescind a ban on open fires and a prohibition on the sale, use, and possession of all fireworks in unincorporated Pitkin County at any time during 2019. John Peacock's not here, but Rich is here, and Joe DeSalvo's here.
Joe DeSalvo.
Sheriff,
Joe
welcome.
DeSalvo, Pitkin County Sheriff. Thank you all.
Questions?
We've been through this once.
I have a
I
question.
came to you with the proposal, and I think John Ely's done some polishing of it, and I like the way it looks right now.
I have a just
Patty?
clarification, because it's a little confusing if you read it. Such prohibition or restriction shall be in effect for the period between May 31st and July 5th only, with the finding of high fire danger. But then it says, during any time during 2019. So we are doing it between May and July, or are we doing it all year round?
All year round. The reason there's a distinction is because the state law changed recently, and there is a different level of review for that period around the 4th of July.
So we can do it on an all year round, but it can be addressed for winter school in the middle of winter, whether or not it's appropriate, and/or whether or not it might be an appropriate case in July, for example, if we still had 4 feet of snow on the ground or something. So it gives some some parameters with some flexibility for Joey.
That's
Is that
correct.
correct?
Steve?
And just for clarification, the May 31st through July 5th, we have to renew that annually, don't we?
All of it.
The rest of the year, I think we can have the permanent.
This has to be reviewed every year.
This whole document has
Because
to be
of
done.
the state law, that's the way it was worded.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Kelly?
So the ordinance allows for a ban on sale, use, and possession, but also to allow you to lift it under your circumstances, if there's low fire danger, et cetera, based on the 3 criteria listed. I guess I'm wondering about the sale provision of fireworks. Is there circumstances where we would limit ban in possession and allow sale, or
We never allow
limit
sale.
sale, or do we
I
ever
don't think
allow
this county would
sale?
ever allow sale of fireworks, at least not while I'm around.
I don't think we have.
I don't think we ever have, unlike the classic stand we see on 82 near CMC down there. So I don't see sale ever being permitted anyway, and I think it was in the state language, the sale of.
This mimics the state language simply because it's all inclusive for activities involving the use, the sale, and so forth, possession. The absence of any previous sale in Pickens County of fireworks is not related to a prohibition from the county, but simply the lack of, I think, just a place to set up shop. There hasn't been an application for that type of land use coming before the board.
No, I haven't seen one in my 10 years.
So from a practical perspective, the sale ban is always going to be in effect here. It's just the use and possession, which will be under your discretion.
I think you're right.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So we don't completely deflate all the 10-year-old boys out there who are so disappointed. I'm wondering what's going to replace this. You've probably had some feedback and have contemplated what happens during the 4th of July or winter school, and what are the options. It's not your department's responsibility, I understand that, but there could be other implications down the road. I'm just trying to think ahead about drones, for instance.
Drone, laser light, those options are available. I think they're being explored by ACRA. A concert was mentioned, something like that. You're right, I'm not ACRA, but I think it would be really cool if they moved that concert, the John Philip Sousa concert that was down at the music tent every 4th of July, and made that at Wagner Park. I think we could do a lot of cool things that don't have fire attached to them.
Right, a light show of some sort. I was just thinking,
But in my next life, I'll be an ACRA person.
Right, exactly.
You can come with me anytime you want, Joey.
Go get the breakfast. Yeah, just thinking, lately in recent times, 1 or 2 drones have caused some commotion. If who is it, Intel or somebody who does their displays with 1,000 drones, and it's a fireworks display with using drones. But I just thought, I wonder if there'll be some calls to the sheriff about that.
They're so annoying.
Stray drones, but who knows? Maybe it'll be.
And they're real
the best
sensitive to
solution.
wind, and we've had so much wind year round pretty much, but especially the summers. They're real sensitive to wind, and
And as
they
we
get.
found out last year, smoke as well. That's why we were canceled last year,
Oh.
because the smoke in
Oh,
the
the
air
smoke.
from
That's
the
right.
fires down
That was a
valley
drone. Oh, okay,
prohibited
got
them
it.
from
All right.
flying. I don't know how the two don't cooperate, but all
I
I know
have
is that was the reason.
one other thing. So Joey, the last time you came and we had a discussion at a work session, I believe, ironically, I think I told you this, I went home and there were fireworks being set off at Molly Gibson Park that same evening. And I was wondering if, Joey, you were up there at the park experimenting.
I found that an incredible coincidence.
I
Maybe
was-
it was an act of rebellion.
I know, that's what I thought. Were they watching, were those young people really watching our meeting today?
Here's a touchy question. I was involved with Stefan Alboy for many years in firing off the 4th
Cannon?
of July cannon at 6 a.m. to wake the town up. And I think they still do it on occasion, and usually it starts car alarms and they get nasty phone calls. And
It
scared
rocks
the
my
bejesus
window.
is that
out of me.
happening anymore?
It happens.
It happens, but we don't know about
I
it.
happen to really like it.
Yeah. but-
Joey, look
Well,
at
it's
that grin on
it's
your
become a
face.
tradition.
I like that it shakes the windows in my 1890 Victorian. But that will be something that I'll have to talk to Jay Parker about and see what we can do.
Because they didn't do it last year, they were smart.
Last year they went around it was the right thing to do, but I'll have those conversations as we get closer.
Usually when it happens, it's by accident or around 6 a.m.
Oh, Jay
on
Parker plans that
July
baby
4th.
down to the louder, the
That
bigger, the
accident's
better.
been going on for like 40 years.
Oh, yeah, I was there the first
most-
time. Yeah.
It's the most on-time accident in the world.
Started out.
You wait for it and it still shocks you, you know?
We were doing that when I think I was about 15 when we started that. Yeah. I can say we because I was with them.
So
Kelly?
since we're within the period now that would allow you to reevaluate the ban based on the criteria of weather and moisture content, are you receiving any requests to do
I
that?
have not received any requests yet. What's it, June 10th? I think it would be too hard for them to get fireworks at this point. just because we've been wet, it doesn't mean July 4th is going to be something different.
Sure.
I mean, 3 weeks could make the world of difference.
Or 3 days.
Or 3 days.
Accra had already been planning, they're rolling the plan they had for last year into this year, so they were already planning on doing the drones hopefully this year. But they still want, because they talk to me every time I see them, they still would like the opportunity to reconsider, and that'll be their choice if they want to come to Joy in years forward.
Yeah, and Kelly, I don't know if you remember from the last meeting, I think somebody asked, what if they come to us in March so they could prepare for July? And I said, if they come to me in March, the answer would probably be no.
Yeah.
Because I can't forecast tomorrow, much less 4 months ahead.
Right, and as we've been told, that the biomass dries out so quickly that a few days.
Brides can be a very tenacious group for wedding visions.
Fireworks at the wedding. Not those kind of fireworks.
As can pregnant mothers who don't want anybody rocking the boat when they just get their newborn down to sleep, so.
Pregnant mothers are actually easier to deal with than
The brides.
The dog owners are, I just increased my voter base significantly just from dog owners.
Right. Just out of interest, how do we treat open fires or burn bans? This is different. Because it's still you though, right?
Right now, you can still burn and get get permits. However, if we go into any stage 1, 2, or 3 restriction, they will all be cut off and not.
Joey's responsible as the fire warden.
The most significant restriction we have is no smoking, no welding, no anything that causes a spark. Even weed whackers and things like that are off the table. So there would not be any open burning in a stage 1 or stage 3 restriction.
That's good to know. It's good to point out. People should understand that. And I noticed you mentioned weed whackers. People think of that as a nylon line, but the new thing is to put a saw blade on it, which is a steel carbide blade. If that strikes the rock, you're getting sparks.
Chainsaws as well.
Chainsaws,
We did have a small fire that started a few years ago at the Watkins Ranch that was done by a welder, and that, I think, just putting fence posts up.
We had one last year underneath.
Not Hunter.
We had that one last year underneath the Castle Creek Bridge.
We get them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for the clarification. So when the word goes out about fire ban, we'll know about the restrictions.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a motion? Are we ready for a motion?
I'm worn out on motions. You guys get to do them.
I'll make a motion to approve this ordinance authorizing the sheriff to impose and rescind a ban on open fires and a prohibition on the sale, use, and possession of all fireworks in unincorporated Pitkin County at any time during 2019.
I will second.
You have a second. Just on further discussion, I just wanted to say one last thing. Maybe Steve, this is extremely
I know some
serious.
people protested loudly when we talked about this earlier, saying we're going to ban all fireworks. If we have a really wet period, the second half of June, you could potentially lift the ban before the 4th of July.
But they wouldn't have the
Yeah.
fireworks.
No.
So
They have
it
the
goes
resource.
both ways, that
Yeah.
it's not, it could potentially, you never know with the weather in Colorado. It can change pretty radically from one part of the month to the next, so.
And Steve, I think that is an excellent point, because although I don't think they can get the fireworks
Right.
within 2 weeks, I think for the winter skull and the winter events, we can reconsider those permits whenever we want.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that people need to understand that with a lush season, we get a lot more fuels being accumulated. And I know that we've been singled out in some cases as a high fire danger area, certain neighborhoods we have here. So this is really, really serious. And it's important. We're not taking this lightly. We're not trying to kill anybody's fun. What we're trying to do is make sure that
Trying to keep them alive.
keep everybody alive and healthy. When you contemplate the fire possibilities in the neighborhoods where I am in Brush Creek or on Red Mountain or in Starwood or any of these places that are right on the urban interface, wild urban interface, it's really serious. And the next conversation hopefully will be with our emergency management people on fire mitigation and the fire department. So this is just part of trying to keep us all safe.
I think it's a bold move. I commend you for for considering this and passing it. Overwhelmingly, my feedback has been positive.
Great. Good to hear
I
that.
really have not had anyone who's been really adamantly disappointed about this.
Excellent. Well, then I'll put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
And there'll be public comment on the 26th.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks for waiting. We'll see you
Okay.
back on the 26th.
If I could take, I know you're trying to get out of here, but if I could have 1 minute to speak to the 18,000 people I work for. This year is my 4th annual golf tournament on June 23rd. Second year that we've done Huts for Vets. We started with the Hope Center, and every 2 years I get a new recipient. And so far for vets, we've raised over $125,000.
That's great, Joey.
And we still have a few weeks to go. So if anyone wants to donate gifts, prizes, money, we're open for business. sheriffscup.com. We're trying to get to 150. It's crazy that 33 vets a day are killing themselves. That number's up by 10 since the last time they did that. And this enables us to bring about 150 vets here to take advantage of the program at no cost to them. So I just want to let the community know to come out on the 23rd and thank a vet and hopefully donate and support these guys who've done so much for us.
Thanks, Joey.
That's great.
Great,
Thank you.
great.
Great cause.
Thank you all. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Support the Sheriff's Cup, everyone. All right, moving along here, we have a resolution amending resolution number 002, 2008, modifying procedures for the collection of the use tax on building materials. And Riggers is approaching
For the next 3
the
items.
D-ring. The bench. The bench, the D-ring.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here to present a resolution and various IGAs that are amended related to our desire to amend the deposit amount that we're collecting on use tax or for use tax. This is because of the change in state legislation enacted June 1 regarding the collection of sales tax on items that are delivered to Pitkin County or to counties in Colorado outside of the actual point of sale. And so in that case, sales tax of 3.6% applies to those materials, building materials in particular, that are delivered, and the use tax does not. Our deposit that we are calculating at collection of, or at the permit issuance, is based upon a 50% of building materials being subject to use tax. We believe it's now going to be much lower than that. And so we have put 10% in to be our deposit amount at permit issuance, though we do expect that we will need to monitor this as we go forward and possibly come back to you if we need to drop it again or increase it, but dropping most likely. There's also IGAs with our municipalities who are very kind to help us to collect this use tax, and we need to give them the direction to change the deposit amount collected at the same time.
Right, and I assume we can't bundle these for 3.
I have a
Patty?
question specific to bundling. I have before me my paper copies, and I have one that is, it's confusing because I don't know which one we're doing, because this one has a red line amended. This one doesn't have a red line amended. So are we, what are we approving here before us? It says collection and the use of building materials, and this one is just for use tax collection.
Collection of the use tax on building materials is what it says in our,
Amending resolution number, modifying procedure for collection of use tax, and then over here, it's a resolution, amending resolution number 223, 2019, and approving an amended, this is the IGA, and
The
this
IGAs,
is just
yeah.
the resolution?
Right. The resolution amending or resolution 002, 2008, modifying procedures, is your direction to us on what we should be collecting, the procedures. And then the second resolution is amending the IGAs.
Yeah, with snowmass.
With snowmass and basalt.
But looks like I only have one in here for snowmass. I don't see an amended. agreement for basalt. It's very confusing because the agenda item titles are all reflected in all three of these. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
You want to add something?
So
Yeah, I
at-
didn't write
Yeah,
the
at the
titles,
beginning,
but
I was
yeah.
wondering, well, why isn't Aspen included? But then when you read the first one, it's making our collection of the use tax to be the same as what is being done in Aspen already,
Well,
according
that
to the way
was,
this is written.
that was the very first one. That,
Yeah, and then the second, third one are just, so we're doing the same thing with Snowmass Village and Basalt.
yeah, well, Snowmass and Basalt don't have a use tax, so the only use tax they collect is ours. Aspen has its own use tax, and at the time, I believe that the 2008 resolution was enacted. The reason why it was calculated at 50% was because that's what Aspen was doing, but they are not subject to the same rules as the state. So we feel at this time we must modify ours to, because we can't double tax people, basically, whereas Aspen can because they're not getting the county sales tax.
But maybe it's over here. Oh, it's over here.
It's confusing.
You find it? Okay, Patty's got it, just,
Well, it's just very confusing because it's just, I know what we're trying to do, I just want to make sure we're doing it right. How's that?
Yeah, well,
I'm not
I think
confused, the
Jeanette
papers are.
was instrumental in putting all of this together and organizing it,
So I know she's got it right.
she
It's
has
just
it
me who's
right.
confused.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with it, so I'm sure it's right.
That's how I feel too. She did it, it's right. I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay,
of course.
And then I
with
found it over
digital, It's
here.
all organized for me.
So I'll just re-summarize what we're doing here. Okay. So
you.
we are amending a 2008 resolution that required that we collect 50% of a use tax deposit
Right.
as part of a permit application for construction materials. Due to change in law that went into effect last week, we are lowering that to 10% collection of that deposit as estimated at application of permit. We've subsequently asked Basalt and Snowmass to collect that use tax on our behalf. We instructed them to collect 50%. We need to rewrite our IGAs to now instruct them to collect 10 on our behalf.
Wow, that was very
And on
good.
top of that,
Yeah.
just to confuse things, because Kelly's absolutely right in how she explained it, we will be looking at what monies come in that are being taxed differently because it funds our transit issues. Money goes to EOTC. So when we figure out how all this works and the proof is in the bank account, we'll figure out then what we need to do to continue to fund transportation.
Yes, and I think that will, won't get our first June receipts until August, so once we start the budget process, it'll be a
That'll come
perfect
back.
time. Another point I'd just like to add is there are contractors and homeowners who are in the middle of their construction project, and they have already given us a 50% use tax deposit. We're going to write letters to all of them, offering them the option, if they so desire, to do a reconciliation that they would typically do at the end of the project, but do it on May 31st, so that we can refund any use tax deposit up that they wouldn't have to pay after June 1. So that will give them the option to be reimbursed, so they won't be double taxed,
Got it.
essentially.
Great. Any other questions? I'll entertain
No,
a
I'm going to
motion.
stay out of it from now on. Kelly's got it straight now for
She
us.
does.
I'm not gonna.
All right, I'll make the motion then for these. Okay, so, let's see. These are resolutions, so they're approved on first reading? Is that correct? Do we need to come back? So should we open these, do we need to open these
No.
for public?
Public hearing will be on
Hearing,
June
okay.
26th.
Public hearing is June 26th, yeah, so we don't need to open it today.
Well, I guess I'm looking, because these are resolutions, right? So we don't need to do a second hearing. These are done.
Oh, they're listed under first reading, public hearing set.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so first reading, set for public hearing for June 26th, a resolution amending Resolution 002-2008, modifying our procedures for collection of use tax on building materials.
Well, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving right along.
And I will make a motion to approve and set for public hearing a resolution amending our IGA with the town of Basalt for collection of our use tax.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I will make another motion approving our resolution and setting for public hearing on June 26th, an amendment to our IGA with Town of Snowmass Village for collection of our use tax.
Second to that?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly,
Cool
thank you
search.
for clarifying for me.
We anticipate there will be a lot of the public out here on June 26th to talk about
Yeah,
these.
all these things.
Exciting subject matter.
Okay.
Well, Kelly will be able to explain.
Thank you. Maybe I can explain it next time.
It's to my wonky side. Yeah.
I'm so glad you were here to summarize that for us.
No, I'm good,
Okay,
thank
up
you.
next, resolution authorizing the Colorado Department of State Electronic Recording Technology Board Grant Award. Janice is here.
Last but not least,
No, we've got land use after this.
okay. I'm Janice Voss Caudill, Pickens County Clerk and Recorder, and the resolution I bring before you is to approve a grant for $17,800 for indexing imaged recording documents from 1950 to 1976. The contract will be with U.S. Imaging to do so. The grant funds are initiated through House Bill, it was Senate Bill, sorry, from, I think it was in 2016, 115, which each clerk, when an individual records a document, we collect a $2 fee, which goes to the state, Secretary of State's office for an enterprise fund, the electronic recording fund. What it allows clerks to do is to submit for a grant request to improve the recording systems. So we'll be doing so by indexing, and once these documents are indexed, they're pushed out. So anywhere in the world, online, an individual can research and pull up documents and purchase them online from us. So, brings that forward.
And we discussed this yesterday at work session as part of the issue we just passed on first reading. So this just allows us to accept the grant. The other one allows us to spend it.
Exactly.
Do I have a
Got that
motion?
one right.
Yes, good job. A motion? Are we
I
ready?
guess I just have a question. For public who might be interested in researching this, what type of index search approach would they, is it a keyword or a year or a property?
So if they go online, it's indexed by grant or grantee, document type. We do incorporate, which many other counties don't, description. So this provides research, as we just described, online, anywhere. So what's really neat about the last 10 years, 10 years ago when I came in to the department, individuals were bringing a document in, we'd scan it, document, push it out. And if an individual wanted to do research, they had to physically come in because they either researched on our system with microfilm, with aperture cards or books. And Jeanette's over there shaking her head, yep. So we've come a long way since then, working with vendors to upgrade systems with concepts. And now the goal will be to we have everything imaged. So what we're working on is indexing. So once we get within this next year, all this indexed back to 1950s, in-house will index from 1949 back. And what will be neat was all image documents from 1881 to present will be indexed and pushed out, so anywhere in the world you can go online and do research. So that has been the goal. So give us another 3 or 4 years and we'll be there. Yep.
I just would love to know what the unintended consequences are.
Means when you go on vacation now and you're in
You haven't paid your
Egypt, you can work.
More work.
If your back taxes, and, past a certain deadline, somebody in Malaysia can just pay your
Yeah.
taxes for you.
You know, there are benefits too. People aren't traveling up and down Valley to come in physically to our office to
Right.
do
No doubt.
research.
No doubt there are.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think I'm looking for a motion or a question.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the Colorado Department of State Electronic Recording Technology Board Grant Award.
I'll second.
We've got a second. Further discussion?
good.
Steve?
And this is the same thing we approved in the budget supplemental request earlier today, so it's the
Right.
same,
We've seen it.
same
Right.
item.
Yeah.
Money in, money out.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Janice.
Can we take a 15?
Yes, I'd like to take a break. 15 minutes, grassroots.
Now we get to
Back
stand
at,
up and stretch. Now that you guys all got here, we're going to leave.
Right. Back at 2:05. We need to come up with signs like that. Okay. We're back with our commissioners meeting on June 12th. It's June 12th. And we're on land use actions. Item number 17 is a resolution approving the Eagle Ridge LLC removal of an affordable dwelling unit ADU deed restriction. And Leslie is here.
Hi.
Take it away.
So, for the record, I'm Leslie Lamont, Senior Planner, and this is Riley Timmons.
Is your mic on? Or get one, point the
Mic.
mic pointed at you.
He calls Mike and we all look around.
I know, I go, no, this is Chris.
Mike's not here.
Mike's not here.
Mike's not here.
Mike left.
Better? Is it better?
So, this is Riley Timmons of Bendon Adams and Chris Bendon, I want to say Chris Adams, representing the applicant, Eagle Ridge LLC. The property is located at Lot 1 of the Cheek subdivision, and it is 715 Willoughby Way. The Cheek subdivision was approved in 1981, and it created 5 lots. 4 of the lots were required to have low-income deed-restricted units on the property. The father in parcel was not required to have a deed-restricted unit. The family that is Eagle Ridge LLC is reevaluating their home due to some health issues, and so they have requested to remove the deed restriction. The APTA board got together, reviewed the request, heard a presentation by the applicant's representatives, and recommends a release of the deed restriction provided the applicant provides a buy-down unit approved by APTA. This buy-down unit would be at Category 3, and therefore the applicant would be required to pay a cash in lieu to satisfy the difference between Category 3 and Category 1. The buy-down unit must be a 2-bedroom unit. This current deed-restricted unit is a 2-bedroom unit. And so the APTA is requiring a similar unit, and it must meet the marketability standards of the housing guidelines. This recommendation from APTA and staff's recommendation to you is consistent with several other deed restriction removal requests that the board has approved in the past. I do have 2 items that I want to revise based upon when my application went into your packet. So at the time that we were working on this, the applicant didn't know what they were going to do with the unit, and they have decided that they want to convert that space into a CDU. So a CDU, caretaker dwelling unit deed restriction, will be required. And then as well, this unit, and I've double checked with the housing office, this unit has been occupied per the requirements of the deed restriction, and in July they're intending to sign their lease again with their occupant, with their tenant. And so we have revised the, why is that like slowly rolling up? We've revised the conditions of approval in your reso for, number 1, I've highlighted in yellow what has changed for you from your reso to what we're proposing. So we're proposing that they have a year, the property owner has a year to find this buy-down unit, buy it down, go through the paperwork with APTA. Oh, I could do this, can't I? And they also were reflecting in here that they want to convert the unit into a caretaker dwelling unit, but the buy-down, the cash in lieu, and then have to occur before the caretaker dwelling unit deed restriction then can be recorded. And I just added the unit must remain in compliance with the current deed restriction until all this falls into place. And if you have any questions for me or Riley or Chris, or did I miss anything that you want to add?
We do have a short presentation for the sake of not being, sorry. We have prepared a short presentation for you for the sake of not being repetitive with Leslie. I'll just kind of pull up a couple of slides.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm just going to kind of move forward. We do have some history if you guys have any questions about the background. Sorry. We do have some history provided within our presentation if you have any questions about the background of the property. But I did want to kind of dig into the 2 precedent cases that we included within our application to provide a little bit further detail on why we propose them as precedents and why we're here today with the ask of cash in lieu and buy-down unit for your consideration. So Lot 5 of the Cheek subdivision is a 3-bedroom low-income unit. In 1994, they actually were approved for a cash in lieu to remove one of the bedrooms and make it into a 2-bedroom unit. The owner at that time never exercised that right, but came back under new ownership, and they were able to be approved for a buy-down unit off-site. They came back in 1995 in May and were approved for a caretaker dwelling unit, so very similar to Lot 1. And then additionally, in speaking with staff, we were made aware of an additional case at Lot 3 Stillwater Ranch. So they were approved for a cash in lieu fee. This was more recent in 2015. And they actually were approved for the adjusted fee in lieu for CPI from 1994. So in line with staff's recommendation and the memo that was attached to your agenda for today from APSHA with their recommendations, we've listed the 3 different options in our order of preference. So the cash in lieu fee, and then the 2-bedroom buy-down unit with the additional fee to compensate for the Category 1 to Category 3 switch, and then obviously status quo. So to provide some context, as Leslie mentioned, there are changing family circumstances. Irene's dad, Alex, has been limited in his ability to be here full-time, and she's actually taking care of him full-time now. So cash in lieu, from a logistical standpoint, I think would be the applicant's preference. And with the re-signing of the lease of the current tenant, we would be able to turn that around in terms of providing the county with mitigation within 6 to 8 months. The buy-down unit with the updated language that Leslie provided would put us on a timeline of 12 to 24 months, potentially if there's any kind of extension for extenuating circumstances that are outlined in the conditions. So that's all that we have for you. Thank you.
I just have a comment. My mic is on and right here. Maybe I'll just speak more clearly. The packet was very thorough, and I really appreciate some of the old history, especially some of the old maps of the neighborhood and the area when these subdivisions were going on along Willoughby and Picken Reserve, Picken Green. So I found it very interesting to look at how the development has changed along this neighborhood. And I understand that circumstances change in people's lives, and that there's sometimes what has been working in the past because of life circumstances changes for what's needed today and in the future. So I'm actually supportive of these changes and the process. Leslie, thank you. That was very clear, your outline as to what needs to be done, A, B, C, and D, or whatever, before elemental P can come through. So I really appreciate having that clarified, and I think this is appropriate.
Steve?
A question on the buy-down unit.
Got all of our mics today.
I turned it off so I could chew and not be heard. So, on the buy-down unit, would the current owner of the Willoughby Way, 715 Willoughby Way, own that unit, or would it go into, be sold through the APSHA system, or what? Is that, or is that, could it be any of the above?
Kind of to be determined. I think, Irene is on the East Coast and managing her father here, and separately her mother, and then she has her own health issues. So I think also handling a rental unit here is probably not high on our priority list. So I would expect that we would work with APSHA, find an appropriate unit, do whatever upgrades we need to do, and then either sell it through the APSHA system or find an owner who would then rent it through the APSHA system. I know APSHA is pretty keen on rentals recently. That's what they see as their biggest need, but I don't think Irene would want to own it and manage it herself.
Okay. It was interesting to me looking through some of the historical items on here, the people involved in, back in 1981. It was like a who's who of was working in the planning department at that time, and my dad was commissioner at that time, so it's kind of like changing something that they all did at that time, but to me it sounds like a good proposal. Would still have the, still would have I don't know the exact word, the CDU for, an affordable housing unit for the community. And then it gives the owner the flexibility to deal with health issues in the existing house there.
I think the only question I have, I guess, is since they would like to retain the CDU, does that have any APSHA implication for how that CDU is inhabited?
Well, it does. The deed restriction is something that APSHA provides. APSHA checks out the unit and makes sure that it complies with the criteria of their deed restriction. It's a there's no income limit on a CDU, as you know, and it doesn't have to be rented. But if it's rented, it has to be either occupied by a family member or rented to a working resident of the community. But we have been talking about this, and as far as the rest of the criteria of a CDU goes, this unit complies. For example, it's 715 square feet, so it's not over 1,000 square feet. It's attached to the house. The floor area of the house has already been approved. The house is built, things like that. So I would think that APSHA would just, like they say in their deed restriction, that they go and they check out the unit and they make sure that, we're worried that people are doing CDUs and it's not a real kitchen or the size isn't correct, things like that.
I appreciate that because to me, this application really advantages the housing program by adding another unit into the inventory. So we're not swapping, we're not getting rid of anything, we're not, just collecting money that isn't going to cover new construction. There's actually a requirement here to add another unit while also retaining a current unit in the APSHA inventory. So I guess based on that, I don't know if we're ready to move on.
We do, if I can interject, we do understand the CDU to be a voluntary unit in a sense, that if the Kaufmans or a future owner decide they don't want it, they could remove it, remove the kitchen and the components that make it livable. But that would be a voluntary thing that they could do in the future, and that's one of the things that I think was just that flexibility was attractive to the family.
I was going to ask if we could just see your amended language again.
Oh, because you did see it. I did put it up, didn't I?
You did put it up, but what we have in front of us doesn't reflect that. So I just want to make sure we have it in front of us when I.
I'm trying to go up to the. Because you've got her thumb drive. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Do we have to open this for public hearing?
This is still public hearing on the 26th.
No, this does not. This is a one read.
Today, yeah.
So there's public hearing today. And real quick, CDUs don't have to be occupied, correct?
Right.
Voluntary occupancy, voluntary removal of the deed restriction. But as Chris said, this unit, I mean, if they have a separate door to the unit, right?
I do.
Yeah, so they would have to eliminate this
separate door.
They have to make it
would
part of the
totally
existing structure.
integrated into the house, right.
Got it.
So,
So, on the question, this is a public hearing then? You want to open it to a public hearing? Anyone wants to comment on this? Seeing none, I'm going to close it back up and bring it back to the board. And we were,
I will make a motion to approve with the amended language as presented by Senior Planner Leslie Lamont. The resolution approving Eagle Ridge LLC's removal of the affordable dwelling unit deed restriction.
I'll second.
we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for the clear presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, folks. Up next, we have a resolution affirming or / denying appeal by John and Molly Morton of hearing officer determination number 06-2018, which approved the Patel activity envelope amendment and site plan review for a driveway. And Tammy's not here anymore, is she? Is she gone?
Tammy is back.
She's not
but
going anywhere.
since she missed out on the last meeting,
So it's you. Suzanne Wolf is here.
I will continue on with the discussion. Sorry that the agenda still reflected that affirm or deny since,
This is to remand that.
I should have changed that once we knew after the last meeting what your, so anyway, I'll just.
We're being bad on mics this
Remind
afternoon.
us, yeah, somehow. The last one wasn't quite pointed at Leslie. I could see your concern back there. Leslie didn't aim it at herself. Okay. Back up to speed.
So just to, so Suzanne Wolf with Community Development. This is a resolution affirming an appeal by John and Molly Morton of hearing officer determination 06-2018 and remanding the matter to the hearing officer. Again, I just brought the same graphics we had at the last meeting. If anything's useful, I can pull it up, but just there showing you the location of the property. The BOCC considered the appeal on May 22nd and found that there was an error by the hearing officer and directed staff to draft a resolution to bring back before you to remand the decision to the hearing officer. So I think that's the very short version. The resolution is in front of you, making the findings required under the appeal provision of the code regarding that the hearing officer made an error, and then the language about remanding the application to the hearing officer for consideration. I'm happy to read any of that into the record if you'd like.
Just wondering, when are we going to see it again, then, if it comes back?
So this, after this will be your final decision on the appeal. Today, if you approve this resolution, if this then remands it to the hearing officer, the matter would go back to the hearing officer for consideration at that point. So would not come back in front of you unless there was
Another appeal.
another appeal.
Right, got it. Okay.
Do you have any
may
sense
be
of the
done,
hearing
we may
officer's
not.
schedule? Is this putting this out a year for the applicant, or?
Not a year, no, but, I mean, we haven't discussed with, timing yet in terms of availability of the hearing officer, availability of staff, but probably later in the summer is what we'd be looking at.
Okay. Any other questions?
So, can I just clarify? So, the concern being was, the failure to consider the amending the activity envelope, because when we saw the mapping, there was a possibility on that,
I can bring that up.
yeah, that it shows that ridge. And then if we amended it, there's that loops where I like the little ruffled blue lines on there. So, you know what I'm talking about, down in that green area. Yeah, that corner that's outside the activity envelope, right there, you got it. So would that be a possibility of consideration to amend the activity envelope to allow the driveway to come over through there to maybe access a different location, site location for the actual residents?
While avoiding 30.
Yes, while avoiding that from that ridge area in the middle there, that's that orange and red, pink. So that was why we were remanding it back, because that had not been considered as part of the hearing officer's hearing. Right?
And I guess that's, right, we want to make sure that the way, the finding number 9 is drafted, and then, of course, the 9, now therefore be it resolved, really reflect the discussion you had
Right,
at the
which
last
is
meeting.
that last paragraph under here, which I've highlighted in orange. So is this again another public hearing? I'm not sure. It's just coming back to us. Did we continue the public hearing from the first time?
I'll open it up.
Can't remember if you closed it or not.
That's
but
funny,
why
I-
don't you-
Why not open it up? So we're going to open, this
Can't
is
hurt to.
a public hearing. If there's anybody who has a comment they'd like to make on this, this is your opportunity. Hey, it's in the back.
Since I was in direct line of sight with this gentleman, I thought maybe I should open that discussion.
Chris is here.
Red light?
Hello, Chris Bryan on behalf of applicant. Just for the record, we opposed the resolution. We disagreed with this board's 5-0 decision, I think, last time, to remand this to the hearing officer. We felt like the hearing officer did not make a clear and demonstrable error, committed no due process violations, and therefore there was no abuse of discretion, and so therefore a remand was unnecessary. I understand that this resolution has proceeded in light of your vote, but for the record, we wanted to say that we don't think it's necessary. Nevertheless, to satisfy staff and this commission, we are prepared to go back to the hearing officer and present additional information, most of which we believe she's already seen, but we can expand on that. I will note for the record that the hearing officer did make at least one site visit to this site, and so is very familiar with this parcel. And so for that reason, we believe that an appeal should have been denied instead of granted. Be that as it may, I understand where we are in these proceedings, and so I just wanted to make a record of that. We understand that if the hearing officer does take into consideration what you've written here in paragraph 9 of the proposed resolution, that she will need to provide further factual findings to support her determination, and we believe that that will occur. And at the conclusion of that, we hope that there's no further appeals. We would like these neighbors to live peacefully together in a neighborly way. And we hope that the other side doesn't sue us yet again.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay.
You can close the public comment.
Questions? Any other public comment? I see none. We'll close the public comment. Thank you.
I'll make a motion, unless the board has other. I make a motion, a resolution affirming an appeal by John and Molly Morton of the hearing officer determinations 06/2018 and remanding the matter to the hearing officer as clearly provided in the now therefore be it resolved section of this resolution.
Second?
I have a second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, good job. You got us
2:28.
ahead of our departure.
We are finished here. Let's see, so now we're going to adjourn the regular meeting. Oh, open discussion, thank you. I'd scratched that out already. Board open discussion. Anyone?
none.
Having none? Still chewing, Steve?
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Other than the fact we have a car reserved for us, it's in the parking garage.
Yes.
What
We're
time?
leaving here at 4 o'clock. So I have to go retrieve my phone wherever it may be in the stroller. So I will be meeting people back here at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So I will be running to get the car.
It's unit.
I'll be bringing it back.
603 has been reserved.
Yeah.
And I've got two other quick things,
Okay.
if I may.
I just let me finish that. I'm not going to be joining you in the car. I think I have to go separately so I can make some other calls down
Okay.
Valley. So I won't,
But
I'll see you
Steve
there.
and
Let's
Kelly will
figure
be.
this out, because I want to pick my car up at Buttermilk so I can go grocery shopping after.
Well, if somebody can pick up the car, I can drive everybody to where they need to go. I will be the designated soccer mom.
You are the Uber,
grandmother.
Uber mom,
It's nothing new, so it's just that we haven't.
I'll get
had
the
it.
car for you and
the
park it out front.
long-suffering Uber mom.
And Steve will be taking you with us and then dropping you off at,
On the way back at Old Snowman.
okay.
Okay,
Wow,
is that complicated?
That is complicated.
We've got logisticians working on
Not
this. Okay, Rich, what do you got?
Just a couple of quick things. I believe, Greg, you had volunteered to speak at a PACT event, and just wanted to let the rest of the board know that if you...
Oh, the party on the 28th.
Yeah, it's on the 28th. It's between 4 and 6 at the firehouse in Aspen. That's a co-responder program.
And this is open to the public? Mm-hmm.
They're
Co-responder?
expecting quite a few people, and they're thinking 3 to 5 minutes, just say a few
What
words.
date is that?
It is on the 28th of Friday.
I'll say a few words in less than that, less time than that.
But if anybody else has an interest, let us know.
At 4 to 6 or 4
Between
to
4 to
7?
6, yeah, and it'd just be intermittent, like every 15 minutes they're
Put
gonna
that on our
have
future
somebody speak.
agendas, just in case.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be good for everyone to show up.
Kelly
This
and
is
I,
our,
since Record might want to go, we'll just have to wait and see what Kelly's doing that day.
and this is for the Pitkin area co-responder team.
Yeah.
And it's the kickoff of our co-responder program, which is a long time coming. That'll be great.
I don't know if Nan is actually going to want names in advance or not, if it's that formal, or if it's just kind of a heads up and
I think it's a
invite
heads
you
up,
up.
except for
So,
Greg speaking, but we should post it in case there's 3 of us that are there.
Yes, okay, we'll certainly do that.
And then we won't
Post it
forget.
anyway, yeah.
Okay.
That way, we get some people there. This is a great program. I was bragging about it at the Veterans Dinner last night.
Yeah. And then the other item is on the 23rd, July 23rd meeting. You all are going to be coming back from Garfield, the Garfield joint meeting. And there was a request to see if you could hold your meeting in Basalt.
If we kept the agenda light.
It is light. In fact, you have to be out of there by 4 o'clock anyway, so the agenda is light. And we'll have, and the reason being, it's easy to film down there because they're all set up. So it really does make some sense to, instead of running you clear up here,
Where are
to
we
set it
having
all
it,
up.
at the
So
Eagle
it would be
County?
at the council chambers, the town chambers there.
Basalt Town
Basalt,
Chambers, yeah. They've got
Oh,
cameras.
so we're gonna go to Garfield, come back to
Garfield.
Basalt.
Yeah, have your
Garfield's-
meeting and then you,
Garfield's in the morning, and where do we do lunch in between? We drive through Wendy's? I can't do that.
I do not have that note on here
We're
about
gonna need to
lunch,
figure
so
that
we
out,
can figure that out
logistics.
for you.
Catered, Heather's will cater lunch.
Let's see,
Yeah,
July
okay.
23rd is,
That sounds good.
let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, we could do it. We could do it. How about an
Greg and
outdoor
I
meeting?
changed
Right. We're thinking about outdoor meetings. Kelly and I were talking that today too. Like, why are we all inside? This
We're
is
gonna have the
crazy.
meeting on Heather's
You have to
patio
film
in downtown Basalt.
Can we
I
roll
guess
a ceiling
Give
back?
you guys GoPros and let you film it, I don't know. But
We can all wear
that's-
GoPro
that's the
helmets.
biggest challenge is
Helmet
that we do,
cams.
Wouldn't it?
You could film it. You
We
can come
could
with
just
it.
film it up for you.
All right, so we'll figure
that's
the
the biggest
logistics
challenge,
out.
is just the filming side of it, so.
Got it.
Let's see, Kelly, you were asking the date,
I just wondered what
what day
that
it was?
July 23rd.
It's
Be
a-
is it a Tuesday?
Is, yeah, it's a Tuesday, so it'll be
July
a Tuesday work
23rd.
session.
Let's see, that's 2 weeks after your child comes, so he'll be with you.
The baby could be a month old by then.
That's true. Okay, and
I believe
then,
that is, oh, I did follow up with Nan, by the way, just on your question regarding the, if they get a lot of requests for different leases, and she has not. So,
Usually I don't think it's changed over many
Yeah.
years, except we've added some when we cleared up space.
To make
and
room.
rearranged space and.
there's more requests for additional space that we just can't accomplish.
Just don't
'cause
tell me we're
we
gonna
only have
remodel the
that,
building
so.
again, okay?
Okay, this year.
they could build
In
lofts.
the next 6 months.
Then the other thing I have is just that I'm not going to be here next Tuesday, and Steve will be chairing, and so things are going to go even faster.
Maybe.
Which reminds me, we're scheduled to go to Phillips next Tuesday.
That's right.
George isn't going to be here. You're not going to be here.
We're not changing that date.
I plan to be here.
And
I will be here.
George
you
and I
will
can
be
pick it
there.
up.
Will we have 3 of us there?
The 3 of us will be there.
Okay.
Because
I
we
was
can-
just wondering, I mean,
Yeah.
if there were only going to be 2 of us there,
Well, we've already noticed it heavily. We've already arranged it with the homeowners there who are planning,
no,
so.
my thought was if for some reason one of you couldn't go, then what's the point in
Maybe we
having an
public.
official site visit if we don't even have a quorum, but if we have a quorum, then that's okay. We can relay what we learned to the other commissioners who weren't there.
Great, okay. Good, thanks for bringing that up.
And then I just was reminded that there's a memorial for Joy Caudell this Friday afternoon at T Lazy 7. I believe it starts at 4 o'clock.
Friday at 4. Do I have that on here yet? Yeah.
No, I didn't know
Thank you.
that. I am,
The mother-in-law to our clerk and
I know I have
original Maroon Bell. And, yeah.
babysitting.
So I will be there.
I'm gonna plan on it,
Oh, I should have said this at public comment, may I?
please.
The party, the 80th anniversary of T Lazy 7.
T Lazy 7, yeah.
Was amazing. It was an amazing event. There were people from all different demographics, age groups. It was a beautiful day. It was so much fun. I want to thank the Dean family. And then I think everyone's heard as a surprise, right after they did a raffle drawing, Beja, Rick Dean's daughter, took off this cape that she had on and disclosed that she was in this beautiful, whimsical wedding dress and asked her dad to walk her down the aisle. Total surprise to her dad. It was amazing, and their vows and it was just, could not have been more perfect. So it was truly an amazing day, and again, thanks to the Dean family.
Yep, sorry, I missed that
Oh, it
one.
was great.
Great, glad you were there.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Okay, I think we need a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. And then we'll meet in front at 4, and we'll see you at Basalt Vista.
5 o'clock at Basalt Vista.
You know how to get there?
I've been there already.
Around in front of the school, you go around in front of the school.
Yep.
At first you think you just go up that way and you can't get there.
You have to go around, yep.
I think you're headed to the south side after that, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
South side after, yep. Great, thank you all. Thanks, Grassroots.
Do you need me to go to Carver?